You're here because you found an umbrella with an odd shape and wanted to see if all the claims that the manufacturer made were true. And that's what I'm here to tell you. Hello, I'm Wanderer001 and this is my review of the Blunt Metro. This is a small umbrella meant to be kept in book bags and so forth. If this is not the first Blunt Metro review that you're seeing, you're probably seeing my original review that I did well over a decade ago. So that's going to be one of the talking points that we're going to start off with, is the actual build quality of this. Yes, that other umbrella lasted a decade with only one small problem, and we'll get into that a little later. The Metro series itself from Blunt has this stylish little case that you can have to keep your umbrella from getting caught up on things. It's almost necessary in some cases to make sure that this doesn't get damaged in your book bag or knapsack or briefcase. However, I will let you know that I did not keep my original in this all the time, and it came out perfectly fine. The case itself is made up of a similar material as the umbrella itself. Up here at the top, because the Blunt Metro does come in several different colors, this will be an accent color similar to the umbrella itself. As you can tell, I got black. There's a little fabric tag right down here letting you seeing some manufacturer logo and information. I will say that this is actually bigger than it was on the original, but let's not talk about that. Let's actually open this up and take a look at the umbrella itself. You can see kind of has this little V shape right there, extra material, and then you pull out your umbrella. Here we have the umbrella in its closed state. In its closed state, it measures 14.5 inches. That is actually a ½ inch longer than it was originally, and part of that is due to some changes that were made with the handle itself. In its open state, the umbrella will be 22.5 inches in length, giving you quite a bit of actual reach with this, considering that it is actually supposed to be a small travel size umbrella. Here we can see on the closure band, there is some branding as well as on one of the flaps of the umbrella itself. Now we are going to kind of shimmy that open a little bit so that we can see by pressing the button, which is a little difficult to see right there, located right there. Open that up and we can actually see the handle itself. The handle is rubberized down here with a blunt icon right there. However, this part up here where the button is actually plastic. This is one of the complaints I had about the original Blunt Metro, in that when I was gripping it, my fingers were actually touching the pole itself. With this, you could see there is plenty of room for me to grip right there, even though they made it out of a different material. Similar to how things were before, at the bottom, you have a lanyard so you can wrap this around your hand. This is non-removable. It's not going anywhere. Sadly, one thing that they didn't change based on my last review. You may be asking yourself as to why this is called Blunt, and it's not just the manufacturer's name. That is partially due because of these blunt ends that you have all around. If you're familiar with regular umbrellas, they have the metal tip that you can poke people with. Blunt, as it sounds, these are all blunted. They're not going to hurt anybody, which is a pro and a con. However, there is a specialized mechanism in here that opens up to tighten up the canopy to give it that unique shape. The canopy size there is 39.7 inches in diameter, giving you, for the most part, plenty of room to hide under there. You can kind of squeeze two people if you get very comfortable. The canopy itself is made up of a material that is URV classified to provide UV protection. Now that's very important because while this is very good at keeping rain off of you, it also is small enough that you can keep in your bag at all times, meaning that in my case, I keep it in my bag if my wife needs it when it's really sunny out like it is right now, because she has very sensitive skin. This will block UV, so you can just use it as a shade umbrella too. That's the beauty of something like this. It's small enough and compact enough to have with you at all times, and it doesn't always just need to be used for rain. Now you are going to be getting this primarily for rain, and I will say that the mechanisms in the corner do allow it to have a very taut canopy that will keep the weather off of you, and I did quite a bit of extensive testing with this, walking around my job several times in pouring rain, but also at my house. I go through great lengths to thoroughly test things, so you know I'm not joking when I say this handles rain very well. Like this. The one complaint I have about the canopy material, the canopy itself is perfectly fine in keeping the rain off of you. However, the branding here on the corner of the umbrella and on this portion that you have to close the umbrella is made of a different material than the canopy itself, meaning that it will take longer to dry than the rest of this. While the umbrella itself might dry in about 20 to 30 minutes, those extra pieces here and there, which are really just branding, take an extra hour almost to dry. So just know you shouldn't throw this back into the little carry bag until everything is dry, and those are gonna slow things down for you. Now, as I've been holding this, you might have noticed that on the canopy itself, there actually is no wind pass through, and that's partially because, well, this one is not designed to do so. There are other blunt umbrellas that have the wind pass up there. This is meant to be small and lightweight and compact and cheap. What this will do is if a wind gust happens to get under, the umbrella itself will actually invert if something gets under there that's a little more than it can handle, and you can see like this. However, if this is a regular umbrella, this would be toast, you'd have to throw it away. However, with the blunt Metro here, you simply grab a corner and flip it back, and it's back to being in its right state. Now, let's talk about some of the fancier topics in here. If you're a real umbrella person, then this makes a little more sense to you than if you're just a filthy casual such as myself that was looking for a good umbrella. The arms for the Metro, the blunt Metro here, is made up of a double rail system, as you can see right here and here. One of the primary complaints I had on the previous version of the blunt Metro is that their connection points up here were just really thin strands of thread. They have made vast improvements in the current version because you can see right there, that's not a thread. And then over here in the corner, this is the only part that's tied down. So you've got a substantial hold there and then a thread holding it down there. But that's not to say that that's a bad thing, because they did change the way they make this to make it even stronger than it was originally. Because of the opening mechanism for this, you are going to notice that the umbrella itself cannot close as tightly as some other umbrellas that you might be used to. It is going to be a little chunkier, but that also means that getting it back into the carrying case can be a little tricky. So you can see right here at the top, it's a little kind of fat. So you might have to spin that down a little bit to get that initially into the carrying case. I'm doing this around a tripod, so it's not gonna look as pretty as it should, but once you get it in there, you know, even at the back, when we zip it up, it's still a little chunky, so you might have to push that down to get that to fully close. It's not a deal breaker, but just something to be aware of. Now, this umbrella, I would classify as a two-stage opening and closing operation. What do I mean by that? Well, when I close this, if I bring it here, that does not actually close it. I have to bring it here and then push again to get a click right there. You might be able to do that in a single action, but if you get to this point, you feel it kind of slow down and stop. You have to finish it off. And for opening, yes, it will open all the way like that, but sometimes, depending on how you have it pointed, you might have to give it a little at the end, a little pop to make sure that it's fully in place. I did talk about the fact that this umbrella does not have a wind pass-through, but Blunt says that it can handle up to Category 1 hurricane winds, which is 115 kilometers an hour. Now, I don't have access to a hurricane, but I do have access to a leaf blower and somebody who's willing to help me. So let's take a look at wind gusts pointed directly at this and what that looks like. Open the umbrella, turn it on, all the way up. That's all. Turbo mode. So right there you saw those wind gusts were between 100 miles an hour, and I got it up to about 112 miles an hour based on my little wind meter that I was testing with. So you can see this is a very sturdy umbrella that will hold up to both wind and rain, as it should. Now, I know some people might feel using a leaf blower, especially at that range, was a bit of an unfair test, but I want to show you extremes with this. Just like you saw when I was out in the rain, I'm trying to test this as thoroughly as possible in extremes so that you know in everyday use that it's not going to break down on you. As I mentioned before, the predecessor to this that I've had for 10 plus years is still with me. In fact, I've passed that along over to my wife to get the new one. And in that 10 years, the only problem that I've had is the top right there. You can see the plastic cap came off of it. It works perfectly fine without that cap. And I only lost it just last year. Blunt does sell replacements for that if you're worried about it. In some of the reviews that I saw, a lot of people were mentioning that that did come off a little easier than it should have. All in all, this umbrella has been a champ for me. It has outlasted every other umbrella that I've ever had. Even with the increase in pricing for this as it currently stands, I would get this again. I did get this again. This umbrella has served me well and will continue to serve me well, I'm sure, for another decade. So if you're on the fence about getting the Blunt Metro, I strongly recommend picking it up. It has been a solid umbrella for me, and I know it will be for you. With that being said, I have been Wanderer 001. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the area below. And as always, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, consider giving it a like, as that will help other people find the video as well. If you like what I'm doing here, you can always help fuel the next review by buying me a coffee, link in the description below. Last but not least, if you want to be notified when I upload a new video, you know what to do.